Welcome to rePROs Fight Back, a podcast where we explore all things reproductive health, rights, and justice. I'm your host, Jenny Wetter, and I'll be helping you stay informed around issues like birth control, abortion, sex education, and LGBTQ issues, and much, much more. Giving you the tools you need to take action and fight back. Okay, let's dive in. Hi, rePROs. How's everyone doing? I'm your host, Jenny Wetter, and my pronouns are she, her. So, y'all, I'm going to be honest. It's been a really hard, rough stretch in the last bit since my last episode. Actually, even before you heard the last episode. My dad passed away unexpectedly on February 17th. It was, like I said, unexpected. So I was luckily able to fly home immediately to spend time with my mom. I was in Wisconsin for, I don't know, maybe 10 days. And we were able to, look through pictures of my dad and share lots of memories and laughs and things, but still struggling a little bit, but that's okay. Grief kind of comes in waves. He was a really good person and a really good guy. When I think back through things like that, I think of when I was little, I wanted to play soccer at my Catholic elementary school, but we didn't have anybody to coach our team. And my dad knew nothing about soccer, but he volunteered to coach, and he went out and bought books and watched videos and to learn about soccer and learn how to coach. And he coached our little team when I was, I don't know, I want to say maybe like in second or third grade or something like that, just because he knew I wanted to do it. It was a lot of the little things I think of. My mom had to work one weekend, and I don't know, I was probably maybe around that same age, like second or third grade. And mom's like, here, I will leave this can of tuna for you all, and you can make tuna sandwiches for lunch. And I said, okay. And y'all, nobody told me how to do it or what I needed to do. So I just did what I thought and, dumped the can in a bowl and mixed it with mayonnaise and made the sandwiches. Nobody told me you were supposed to drain the water out of it. How was I supposed to know? But my dad, he just sat there and ate it and didn't say a word. And I didn't know I did anything wrong until my mom came home and she's like, did you drain this? And obviously, no, how would I know I was supposed to do that? Again, just kindness and happy with, whatever. He was very quiet and very witty. You would kind of not forget he's there, but just not necessarily think he was listening to everything because, like I said, he was very quiet. Now, again, my mother and I are both pretty talkative, and maybe he had less opportunity to talk, but he was pretty reserved. And then, but all of a sudden he'd come out with this like really witty comment and would make everybody laugh. He was really smart. He was an engineer. He worked in aviation and then later in environmental controls. He has a couple patents. One, he designed the throttle control system for the lunar rover that is on the moon. The story goes that he had questions about his design and said that it wasn't going to work, and he was pushed that no, it'll be fine, and he was unsure, and he was with my mom and they were watching the moon landing, and then it wouldn't start, and he was so mad. So frustrated. It finally started and worked fine, but he was so frustrated that he wasn't able to get it perfect, even if it did work. I had so much fun when I moved out to Washington, D.C. I was able to go with my parents, but I was really excited to go with my dad to the Air and Space Museum Annex. So it's out by Dulles. It's bigger than the one on the mall, and walk around. And I knew my dad worked on helicopters. I knew he did a lot of work on them. He did some work on Marine One. He used to investigate helicopter crashes during the Vietnam War. I knew a lot about helicopters and that he used to do stuff on them. What I had no idea until I walked around the Air and Space Museum with him is that he had also worked on fixed wing aircraft. And it was so fascinating to walk around and be like, oh, yeah, no, I did work on this. Or, oh, yeah, no, I did work on this. And it was just so delightful to learn more. Again, that really quiet man who just didn't necessarily share things. It was really nice to get that opportunity to learn more. Yeah, I'm gonna miss him. But like I said, it was nice to be able to share memories and spend time with my mom. Yeah, like I said, still kind of processing and working through all of the things. It was also very weird. My birthday was immediately after after I got back to Washington DC. It's on March 1st, and it felt complicated and weird, and how do you celebrate at a time like this? And yeah, it's just weird. But I'm so grateful for my community that I have around me. I had so many amazing friends reaching out to me and checking in on me and sending me thoughtful notes or flowers, or I had a wonderful group of friends that I work with send soup, and it was just so much amazing community sending their love, and it was just really grateful. So thank you to all of them for being there. Okay, y'all. Let's move on to happier things. But I just felt that I needed to share. Okay, so this week there is Abortion and Provider Appreciation Day. It is March 10th. So make sure to thank your local abortion provider. We'll share. There's a toolkit with things you can do and tweets and things like that you can share to make sure that you are showing love for abortion providers in this really hard time. Yeah, with that, let's move to this week's interview. I am so lucky to have one of my favorite people on here, Jessica Pieklo with Rewire News Group, and host of the amazing podcast that I hope you are all listening to, Boom Lawyered. I have Jess on to talk about the case in Texas that is challenging mifepristone's FDA approval. Now, just to be clear, we recorded this on Thursday, March 2nd. So things could have changed. We don't have, at the time we recorded, we do not have the decision yet. That could change between now and when this airs on Tuesday. So just putting that out there. We're talking about what may happen. So the status could have changed in the meantime. But all the information should still be accurate and the same. And with that, let's go to my conversation with Jess. Hi, Jess. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me back. It's always such a pleasure.
I always love having you on. And I feel like before we start this one, we need to be clear that we're recording this on Thursday, March 2nd at 1. We are talking about a court case that we could have a decision on by the time this airs.
Absolutely.
But I guess maybe we should Jess, would you like to introduce yourself real quick before we dive in?
Oh, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Jess Pieklo, Senior Vice President and Executive Editor at Rewire News Group and co-host of the Boom Lawyered podcast.
And if y'all aren't listening, you definitely should. I, for sure, before I recorded this, made sure to go back and re-listen to the episode where you talked about the case so I could just get an extra refresher to be ready.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, my co-host Amani Gandhi and I have a lot of fun when it comes to the send-up of this particular judge in general. But let me be clear, there's nothing fun about what conservatives are trying to do to medication abortion and access to abortion pills in this country.
Okay, so let's start there. What is going on? What is this court case out of Texas?
So we have what is, I mean, there's no other way to describe it, but a political attack through the federal courts on medication abortion access nationwide. The Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine versus The FDA is a lawsuit that was filed in the Northern District of Texas. It's in front of Judge Matthew Kazmarek. And it is functionally what we on Boom Lawyer called AstroTurf litigation. It is a challenge by a group of advocacy plaintiffs they have a mailing address in Tennessee, but they incorporated in the Northern District of Texas a month before they filed the lawsuit, which is super
Oh,
convenient.
I mean, why not?
Just I'm sure coincidence. Things
Yeah.
move fast. I bet they had a lot going on. At any rate, they incorporated, filed a lawsuit, and they are arguing that 20 plus years after the fact, the Food and Drug Administration has rushed to market mifepristone, which is one of two medications used in the United States in a medication abortion protocol, and that it is, as a drug, safe and dangerous and needs to be pulled from the market.
Well, that all sounds, very simple and true, right? Like it's definitely I've heard so much about medication abortion being unsafe now.
Right, right. I
Not at
mean,
all. Not anywhere.
as I said from the outset, it's a political attack on medication abortion. It is also using abortion as a way to further attack the administrative and regulatory state writ large. I mean, one of the things I think that's important to realize with the conservative legal movement is they like to use abortion to get to other things that they are going after as well. In this case, the power of the Food and Drug Administration to approve and regulate a wide class of drugs generally. So this is once again not just about abortion. We have abortion being used and abortion patients caught in the crossfire while legal conservatives are looking to dismantle the Food and Drug Administration.
It's also wild, 20 years later, it has been approved for 20
Right.
years. That feels like that should not be, you can't challenge it was a rushed decision 20 years later.
I remember when things like statute of limitations mattered, standing for injuries and claims mattered. These are all legal concepts that were designed to prevent very seriously what the law and legal profession considered frivolous lawsuits, nonsense lawsuits, political larks that the courts would be caught up in. And that is exactly where we find ourselves, in large part thanks to the Dobbs decision. But really, I mean, it's been a campaign moving up to it at this point. And so, yeah, I mean, the claims on its face are absurd. Let's just take them. 20 plus years, mifepristone has been on the market now and used as part of a medication abortion regime. In that time, there have been a minuscule amounts of reportable incidents of harm, right? It is, as folks will hear repeated in court filings and as advocates talk about this, medication abortion, mifepristone, is routinely safer to take than Tylenol. And it is certainly safer than carrying a pregnancy to term. So just in terms of level setting, that's where we're at. But really, you would think that if there was a lot of danger around this drug, that we would have heard from it by before now. Conservatives have an answer to that. What they do in their legal filings is point to a petition, a letter that they had filed, that some conservatives had filed 2 years previously with the Food and Drug Administration that was functionally making the same claims now, which is so laying the groundwork for this lawsuit, basically, where they said, hey, look, we think this is a dangerous drug and you need to pull it off the market. And the FDA said, thank you for your input. We won't be doing that. And so they didn't like that opinion or that result from the Food and Drug Administration. It's important to note where they filed this lawsuit, right? We are in the Northern District of Texas in Amarillo in front of Judge Matthew Kazmarek, who has a history, not just as a judge, of very harsh anti-choice, anti-reproductive health and justice rulings. I mean, this is the judge who has blocked contraception access for teens in Texas under the Title X program on the grounds that their parents have religious objections to it, not even the teen's own objection to it, the parents' objection, but has, as was reported in, the Washington Post, had a very good write-up on his deep, deep ties to the anti-choice community. I mean, he was functionally a Trump judge that was appointed to issue the kinds of rulings we are starting to see from him. So It used to be that lawsuits would happen and you'd think there'd be like robust conversation of the law. And that's not where we are anymore in the abortion landscape.
Man, I totally forgot about that Title 10 one then, that he was the judge on that Title 10 case. I
And
mean,
that was
it's
just very
obviously,
recently
but yeah.
appealed. Yeah. So the Biden administration has just recently appealed that decision and it will now like work its way through the Fifth Circuit. But yeah, they advocates again in another piece of AstroTurf litigation filed a direct attack on reproductive health rights and access before him. So we have a pretty good sense of what he's going to do in this case.
So I think there has been, especially particularly since the fall of Roe, this sense of I live in a blue state, like I'll be
hmm
fine, and like I'm protected, like I don't have to worry about this. But this case is makes it very clear that that's not the case.
Yeah. So one of the alarming parts of this case, I mean, it's all alarming, but truly is that the ruling that conservatives seek has the potential to reach into abortion protected states right now. That one of the reasons is that they are requesting a nationwide injunction that would prohibit the FDA from continuing to keep the drug on the market. And that would have the effect if it is allowed to take impact and the Biden administration respect. Like there's a lot of ifs that need to happen. But if the ifs happen, then it would mean that people who live in states like Colorado, where I am, or California, or New York, that have made efforts to either expand or shore up access and have access to medication abortion within their borders, that we would be unable to access it as well. So it is one way that conservatives are looking to implement a nationwide abortion ban. So don't believe them ever if you did when they said that they wanted to send the issue of abortion back to the states. They want to send the issue of abortion back to the states until they can send it back up to the federal level in a friendly posture to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was clear really quickly as the House and Senate Republicans were like looking to pass national bans.
Yep.
We were like, oh, okay. Yeah. You clearly meant throw it back to the states.
Yeah.
Like, so the FDA has 20 years of this being allowed.
Yeah.
Can the Biden administration just be like, screw this? Like,
Right.
no.
Right. So, this is there's a lot to be concerned about with this case. A ruling from Judge Kaczmarek that says mifepristone is unsafe. The FDA acted beyond its authority in approving it, and the drug needs to be pulled from the market. In and of itself is dangerous, even if it's not implemented, because it is creating a foundation within the law that those things are true. And up is down now at that point. Okay. So, like, no matter what happens in terms of implementation, that is part of the danger. It also creates confusion, it chills people's rights. We know that folks are already very confused about whether or not abortion is legal where they live, how they can access it, what they need to do to get access of it. All of this stuff that creates confusion around our rights is absolutely part of the strategy. Now, but where the rubber meets the road, what can actually happen here? There is a very good argument that the Food and Drug Administration could ignore this ruling and be well within its rights to do so. And there are a couple different pathways. And in fact, David Cohen and a couple other scholars have an excellent piece in Slate Magazine that was published that I would really encourage folks to Google and find, because they really lay out the argument well. But basically, federal agencies have enforcement power. And like all enforcement power, that is discretionary, right? We talk about prosecutorial discretion. Sometimes the cops can't or won't pull certain folks over, right? Like, same thing here. There is a whole swath of drugs that exists on the market right now that does not have FDA approval, or is in that gray zone that the FDA could choose to use its enforcement authority and yank from the market. The FDA can do the opposite here and say, we are choosing to not do that. There's a ton of reliance interest in keeping the medication on the market. In fact, biotech firms have filed their own claims to say, knock this off. This is like really ridiculous. So that's one possibility. The FDA itself also in its charter has discretion and power to approve and remove drugs. Federal courts do not have the power to approve and remove drugs from the marketplace. They can say that the FDA has to do things, but it's ultimately the FDA that has that power. So it has to decide as an agency what to do here. So there is reason to think that the administration can and absolutely should maneuver around whatever decision comes out of the Northern District of Texas. Will it is an open question.
Wow, this just like gives me just like chills thinking about this because, like, I know you touched on this earlier that it's broader than just abortion, but as you were talking, I was just thinking through, like, oh man, I can just see they're going to start coming for any sort of gender affirming care
Absolutely.
and drugs used with that. Like, I just see this having such huge impacts on all of these issues that the right is really attacking right now.
Yeah, I mean, it is really important that we have this conversation in the same breath as we talk about the attempts to criminalize gender affirming care in states across the country in efforts to elevate that legislation nationwide because they are part and parcel of the same attacks, just writ large in criminalizing healthcare.
Ugh, I just kind of feel like everything is terrible right now. Sorry, y'all. I'm a little bit of a Debbie Downer today. This is all bad. What kind of impacts would this have if if the judge does make this decision and the FDA doesn't act?
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, we don't know. Things are very uncertain right now. I would be surprised if the FDA was like, yep, pull all the drugs from the market right away. Like, that's just not how things work usually. But also, we are completely in the upside down. So I don't want to instill any false confidence in anyone. The fact that it is uncertain is in and of itself troubling. I will say though, it's not a perfect response, but it is really important that um, we are in uncharted waters in good ways as well, in the sense that the response building up to the Dobbs decision and absolutely after Dobbs from direct aid groups, from folks who understand in very like community centric ways how to get folks either to care or how to get care to folks is robust. And there is a what I would just say a pretty uniform sense that no matter what Judge Kazmarek decides, folks will do what they need to do to make sure care continues.
Yeah, and I think before we touch on the direct access groups, because there is another vein of attack that we're seeing on that, is talking about, this is a targeting one of the two drugs used in
Yeah.
medication abortion. And around the world, there are, and it's also a WHO approved method is to use misoprostol
Hmm.
only. So there are alternatives, and you're already seeing some providers talking that they're ready to switch regimens, and that the misoprostol only medication abortion is almost just as effective. And there's
Hmm.
seems like, maybe like there could just be some skews in data, but like it's almost just as effective as the current regimen that we're using. So there will be some time to make that switch, but like there are approved methods that we can
Yes.
use even if we lose access to Miffy.
Yes, absolutely. And it's such a critical point. And also, we don't know what losing access to Miffy means, right?
Yeah.
It takes a while for a drug to come off the market. And I mentioned a couple lawsuits by the manufacturers of these medications who have actual reliance interests in them being remaining on the market. It's weird to be rooting for big pharma in this interest, in any interest, but particularly here. But really, the pharmaceutical companies do have a very strong legal argument that this is ridiculous. In addition to very damaging for economic reasons, it'll be curious to see which the conservative federal courts side with, if they love capitalism more than they hate abortion or vice versa. I mean, that's really forcing them to choose. So cynical and dark. I apologize,
I know,
everybody.
but like Also, like, man, I don't know where they come down on that one.
Yeah, and there is the lawsuit also that was filed by the Democratic Attorneys General that was at the very end of last week that also targets the Food and Drug Administration, but from the other end that says, "Hey, FDA, the restrictions that you have on MIFI and on and medication abortion are too onerous. They don't match the data. They are too restrictive. You need to lift them." So clearly, the FDA and medication abortion is fully the center of where the post-op abortion fights in the courts is concentrated.
Yeah, and if y'all want to learn more about those restrictions, I have a great episode with Greer Donnelly talking about the REMS restrictions around MIFI and how the Biden administration recently changed them. Still not as loose as we would like, but better.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that gets into the like why medication abortion is such a target
Hmm.
because like you can people can get it and not have to go to a clinic where there's protesters and like it's starting to break some of that hold that the anti-abortion groups have had of like intimidating people in person.
Absolutely. I mean, you don't put that genie back in the bottle, do you? Right?
No.
If you can order pills online, if you can have a text conversation with a provider as questions come up while you are in the process of managing your own abortion, then there is functionally no way for the anti-choice movement, absent person to person terrorism, which is the point of the bounty provision in bills like Texas's SB 8, for example, absent that person to person harassment direct in your community, there's no way to control it. And they know that. That's why they've so, I mean, that's why Josh Hawley's wife is part of the legal team involved in this lawsuit out of Texas.
Okay. I think the next thing that we need to talk to is those direct access groups because now they
Yeah.
are starting to be targets. We saw legislation introduced in Texas this
Hmm.
week, right? And I've
Yeah.
lost all sense of time, y'all. Um, Trying to block website access to groups like Plan C, and Aid Access.
Yep. Yeah, it's so Americans United for Life, the national advocacy organization, puts out model legislation every year that they hope gets picked up in the states, and this was one of their sort of like piece de resistance after Dobbs is really going on an information warfare tip, and this is as you said, it would block um what they call abortion provider, but the language is very vague. It could block even potentially reporting around the activities of groups like Plan C and Choice and Aid Access, for
Oh, I
example.
didn't see that.
It depends on how you read it. It's abortion or support. What support? I
I
mean,
mean, not surprising with them. They go with the broadest
right.
language.
So, but these groups are specifically identified in this Texas legislation, and they literally want to block to erase them from the internet in Texas if they could. Iowa has picked this up, and because it is part of because Iowa's version is part of its copycat version of Texas's SB 8, this bounty hunter provision that overruled Roe on the shadow docket. Uh, Iowa's allows private citizens to sue the ISP if they find out that somehow somebody has accessed this information. We've completely crossed the Rubicon. But I think it speaks to the fear, really. It's always been a fear-based and fear-driven movement, but the amplification around that, and that's I mean, we can sort of chuckle about that, but that's also concerning because when folks act in such fear-based places, that's where we see amplifications around, real violence and threats. People are just kind of losing their minds around it. But what we know about Texas anti-abortion antics is what happens in Texas never stays in Texas. And so we can expect this to be this kind of legislation to be very popular in other abortion gerrymandered states like Arkansas and South Dakota and Missouri. Missouri may have already even tried something like this. But I could be speaking out of turn there. If I am, I apologize, Missouri.
Yeah, this all just makes me think of like trying to block access to information in general for so many things, right? Like not wanting
I
kids to have access to sex ed, like all of the things.
Yes, and it reminds me what I was going to say because it actually is really tied into this lawsuit, the Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine that we were talking about originally, because the basis of their claims also relies on the Comstock Act, and the Comstock Act is this law from the 1800s, and Rewire News Group is going to run a piece on Anthony Comstock in mid-March that I'm very proud of. Lisa Needham wrote it for us, so I'll send it along to you. But Anthony Comstock and the Comstock Act made it prohibited sharing information and of lewd materials, and this was designed to target birth control information, abortion services, prohibit all sorts of information around reproductive health and access. Anthony Comstock was a Civil War crusader who wanted to heal the broken men of the South and believed it was all of the sex that they had and all of the drugs they were doing and all of the liquor that they were drinking. And
It's
not, I
always
don't
the
know,
sex.
it's always the sex. And I don't know, not the like karmic and generational harm, something like chattel slavery enacts on a nation. Not that. It was
No,
the
no,
sex.
no. It's the sex.
It was the sex. And so Anthony Comstock is here again in the year of our Lord 2023, directing how social conservatives do policy. And it is really, truly about block access to information once you've blocked access to care.
Information. Okay, so this is totally unrelated, but it's like going around my head, and I have to share it because it is like my favorite piece of information I learned in the not
Uh-oh.
too distant past. I was listening to a podcast, and they were talking about Griswold v. Connecticut, and so they
Uh-huh.
were talking about the original law.
Yeah.
Do you know who was instrumental in writing the original law that was challenged under Griswold?
Who? Anthony Comstock?
No,
No.
Phineas T. Barnum.
Oh, get out. How did I feel ashamed of my own
Right.
knowledge that I didn't know
I
that.
almost fell over when I heard that. I'm like, I'm sorry, P.T. Barnum, as in the circus person?
Yes.
What? Yeah. He was a state
Yeah.
legislature and wrote that law.
So it really is all a circus.
I know, exactly.
Oh, God.
It's like now my favorite new piece of trivia because it really just like blew my mind.
You just blew my mind now.
I know. I was like, how did I not know this?
Well, yeah, I'm like embarrassed for myself. First of all, I apologize, everybody. Jess Pieklo will do better in the future.
Okay, sorry. Everything's a circus. Had to share.
No, that's great. I am gonna bar that with attribution.
Right? I was like, how did I not know this? And now I need to tell everybody because
Oh,
I
yes.
was
I
so
love that.
delightfully shocked. Okay, so like everything's bad, and I feel like there's like whack-a-mole of trying to stop all the horrible things of different ways that access to abortion is being challenged. Like, what do we need to do to like fight to protect access? Like, it just feels like it's being challenged on so many different fronts right now. Like, what are some of the like big picture things we need to be thinking about?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's hard to feel and think like big picture when everything's coming from all sides, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, particularly when it's chaotic, one of the things that Amani and I try to tell and remind our listeners is that everybody does have a lane. And your lane is not going to be the same as everybody else's, and that's okay. So don't like feel weird or anxious or, try not to about it. Be very kind with yourself in terms of what lane you find yourself in. Right now, I have been really encouraging folks to work within their local communities because abortion access is a community access issue, and the courts are not going to save us. Lawmakers are not going to save us. We are going to save ourselves. And so we first and foremost do that in our neighborhoods and in our local communities. So those are your direct aid groups. Those are, truly, if you are somebody who wants to be running for office, look for your local elections first, because all you have to do is look at the attacks on our schools right now to see how important it is having strong allies on school boards, for example, what that really does in terms of pushing back. Because look, you don't get to the attack on trans kids in schools without a 10-year campaign on sex ed curricula in public schools also, right? Like, if folks don't understand how sexual health works generally, then it is so much easier to bring the attacks that we have now. So really driving into those local spaces, not to say that the national is not important, because it is, but if folks are feeling like really particularly like, oh, this is bad and I want to do something now, there's a dopamine hit, I think, that is different when you're in your space, than, sending a check to a national org, or, calling your senator or representative's office. All of those things are important, but truly, like, this is right now about, being defiant and joyfully so when possible in our backyards.
Yes, absolutely. It's always nice because then you can get engaged with your community in so many other ways and
Yes.
finding out more about those issues. And like the states are where so much of the stuff is happening
Yeah.
that it is really important to be paying attention to your local. I mean, I just came from Wisconsin and was home for there's a big Supreme Court,
Yeah, there
Wisconsin
is.
State Supreme Court election. I was there for the primary. Mom went and made sure to vote, and that is coming up, the big election in April. So if you're in Wisconsin, make sure you are getting out and voting. Not only is it huge for abortion rights, but it is huge for any number of pro democracy issues.
Mhm.
So, like finding things like that that are happening in your state are also a great way to stay involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just it does. It just feels so overwhelming, and it's really helpful to not think you need to do all the things. Like
Yeah, and I mean,
I always
because
am I'm terrible at that. I feel like I need to be always be doing more and doing all the things, but like that's not the way to take care of yourself, and it's not the way to be helpful long term.
I'm always like, there needs to be more, there needs to be more. But I think also that's part of the overwhelm, right? Like, if folks feel overwhelmed, then they just disengage because it's too much. And frankly, it is too much. All of this is too much for regular folks, let alone folks like you and I, who are in this space all the time, folks who listen to this podcast. If you're listening to this podcast, you obviously care very deeply about this issue. I guarantee you, you're overwhelmed as well. It's a lot for the whole space.
Yeah, I've been really careful about thinking through like where my lanes are and like what is best for me. And so like I know the ones I always struggle with is when there's like the big in-person things. Like I always feel like I need to go, but I've noticed that like the big in-person things give me a lot of anxiety.
Oh
And
yeah,
like, nope, drawing my line, not going. And
yeah,
like it's okay.
it is okay.
So like finding those things that you can
Ex-
be like, you know what? That's not what I'm gonna do.
exactly, exactly.
And maybe it's wearing, I have the "Fund Abortion Y'all" shirt that looks like the Waffle House sign,
Uh huh.
wearing that when I fly home to the Midwest, right? Like, it's just, like, the little things you can do too.
Given the role that abortion stigma plays in maintaining and pushing and all, like, just it, like, as the foundation for where we are right now, those are real acts of resistance every day.
And they're so important. Well, Jess, I guess we will wait with, bated breath for the decision. I don't know. I guess maybe we didn't touch on or I have forgotten already, which happens. What's the next step? So, like, if this decision comes down, then I'm sure
Yeah.
it'll be appealed, but, like
Yeah, so we're talking Texas, which means we would so regardless, like, let's say Matt Kaczmarek has an unusually good day as far as repro advocates are concerned and decides that this is not going to be the decision that defines his career as a political stooge. He's going to save that for later. But if we get a good decision, we know for sure the anti-choice groups would appeal that instantaneously to the Fifth Circuit, and the Fifth Circuit would almost certainly oblige whatever requests that they made. But so logistically, we're waiting on a ruling, and depending on what that ruling says, we can, we'll have some answers in terms of what it means for the FDA and MIFI and for folks across the board in terms of access, and how the Biden administration is going to respond. Then the decision will be appealed up to the Fifth Circuit, get to the decision, and up to the Supreme Court potentially at some point. I mean, there are a lot of different ways that this could go, but I would be surprised if advocates weren't really trying to use this one to go all the way to the Supremes.
Yeah, that all gives me heartburn.
I'm so sorry.
There's like no good news in any of that.
I continue to just really like go back to the advocates and activists in
Yes.
the spaces
Work
that
being
are
done on the
getting
ground.
folks care and knowing how smart and how resilient. And I hate that folks have to continue to be so resilient, but I'm grateful for the resiliencies. It is not ideal, but I continue to just, when my heart breaks with the place that we're in, know that there are very smart, good people doing everything they can to deliver care. And that's where I need to be focusing my attention and efforts.
Yeah, hard agree. All of the people on the ground have been giving me so much hope.
Yes.
Well, Jess, as always, it is a delight to talk to you. Thank you for doing this.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I hope there is a time when we can have a conversation on this show and I'm not like, well, see, it's bad. And then it gets
I
worse.
know.
And oh, by the way, it'll only get worse from there. I really do. And, I do. And, while I can, just thank you to the advocates and folks on the ground right now doing that work because, here in Colorado, I know that we're experiencing just a flood of folks from our neighboring states coming in. And, there's not a day that goes by that I'm not just really in awe of the power of our community.
Yes. And when this episode comes out, oh no, I'm going to forget the date. Abortion Provider Appreciation Day is that week. So make sure to thank your local abortion provider for all of their amazing work.
Absolutely.
All right, Jess. Thank you.
Thank you as always.
Okay, y'all. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Jess. I had a wonderful time talking to her as always. She is just so smart, and it's always wonderful to get someone who understands the law and the legal end much better than I do on to talk about these issues. So thank you, Jess. If you have any questions or any topics you would like us to cover, always feel free to reach out. You can email me at Jennie, JENNIE, at reprosfightback.com. Or you can reach out to us on social media at rePROs Fight Back on Facebook and Twitter or rePROs FB on Instagram. With that, I will see y'all in 2 weeks. For more information, including show notes from this episode and previous episodes, please visit us at our website at reprosfightback.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at rePROs Fight Back and on Instagram at rePROs FB. If you like our show, please help others find it by sharing it with your friends, and please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Thanks for listening.